My boyfriend broke up with me 3 days after I paid off his $47,000 debt. His reason was pathetic. His new girlfriend got a surprise invoice. I found out my boyfriend of 2.5 years was breaking up with me because I breathed too loud during movies. That's the reason he gave me. Those exact words. We were sitting at our kitchen table, my kitchen table in my apartment that he'd been living in rent-free for 11 months, and he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I just can't do this anymore, Myra. You breathe too loud during movies. It pulls me out of the experience." I actually laughed. I thought he was joking. We just had dinner. I'd made his favorite butter chicken from scratch, the recipe I'd learned from his own mother. The naan was still warm on the counter. I had tikka masala sauce on my sleeve because I'd been rushing to get everything perfect before he got home from work. "You're serious?" I said when his expression didn't change. "I've been thinking about it for a while," he said. "We want different things." "Because I breathe during movies." "It's more than that, it's everything. You're just a lot." That was November 14th, 2022. 3 days earlier, on November 11th, I had paid off the remaining $31,400 of Marcus's student loans. Combined with the credit card debt I'd cleared in August, $8,200, and the car payment I'd taken over in March, $7,400, I had given this man $47,000 over the course of 8 months. I didn't give him that money because I'm stupid. I gave it to him because he cried in my arms and told me he couldn't see a future for himself. Because he said the debt was drowning him, that he woke up every morning with his chest tight and his hands shaking. Because he showed me the collection notices and the threatening letters, and I watched his whole body tremble as he admitted he'd been hiding how bad it really was. I gave him that money because I loved him, and because I could afford it, and because I genuinely believed we were going to get married. He had mentioned rings. He had asked about my ring size. He had saved a Pinterest board called Future Home with both our names on it. And now he was breaking up with me because I breathed too loud. "I need you to move out," I said, and my voice was completely steady. I surprised myself. "Tonight, preferably. I can give you until Sunday, but that's it." "Myra, come on. I can't find a place that fast." "Then call your mom. Call Devin. Call literally anyone else because you are not staying here." He moved out that Sunday. He took everything that was his, plus a few things that weren't: my Instant Pot, my toolkit, the nice sheets I'd bought for the guest room. I didn't fight him on any of it. I just wanted him gone. 3 weeks later, I saw him at a holiday party thrown by my company. He was holding hands with Jenna Kirkland from accounting. Let me back up and explain how Marcus and I met, because it matters. We met in April 2020, right at the start of lockdown. We were both stuck at home, both on the same dating app, both bored out of our minds. He was a graphic designer at a small marketing agency. I was a financial analyst at a regional insurance company, the kind of job that sounds boring but pays well and gives you stability. I was 28. He was 31. Our first date was a video call that lasted 4 hours. Our second date was another video call. By date 3, we decided to take the risk and meet in person, outdoors, masked, sitting 6 feet apart on my balcony. He brought wine. I made pasta. We stayed out there until 2 a.m., and when he finally left, I knew I was in trouble. Marcus was charming in a quiet way. He wasn't flashy or loud. He was thoughtful. He remembered everything I told him: my favorite flower, the name of my childhood dog, the fact that I hated the sound of people chewing ice. He would show up with little gifts: a book he thought I'd like, a candle and a scent I'd mentioned, a sketch he'd done of the view from my balcony. He was also broke. I knew that from the beginning. He'd mentioned student loans, mentioned that graphic design didn't pay as well as people thought. I didn't care. I wasn't looking for someone to take care of me financially. I had my own career, my own savings, my own retirement accounts. I was looking for a partner, not a provider. We moved in together in December 2021, into my apartment, which I owned. He offered to pay half the mortgage, but I told him to just cover utilities and groceries. It seemed fair. His income was less than half of mine. The money problems started becoming real in early 2022. He would get quiet and distant for days at a time. He stopped initiating plans. He started forgetting to cover groceries, and I'd end up paying just to keep the peace. Finally, in February, he broke down and told me everything. The student loans were worse than he'd let on. He'd been on an income-driven repayment plan, but the balance had been growing instead of shrinking. Interest was eating him alive. His credit cards were maxed from trying to keep up appearances. The car payment was 2 months behind. He was fielding calls from collectors multiple times a day, silencing his phone whenever we were together. "I don't know what to do," he said. "I can't see a way out. I feel like I'm going to be in debt forever. I feel like I'm never going to be able to give you the life you deserve." That last part got me, the life I deserve. He was thinking about our future. He was worried about being able to provide for me, for us, for the family we'd talked about having. So I offered to help. It wasn't a gift initially. We talked about it as a loan. I drew up a document because I'm a financial analyst and that's what we do, and he signed it. I would pay off his debts and he would pay me back over time, interest-free. Once he was out from under the weight of it, he could focus on growing his career, maybe freelancing on the side, building something real. We both signed, we both dated it. I even had it notarized just in case. Then the payment started and the document became meaningless. Because how do you hold someone accountable when you're sleeping next to them every night? When you're building a life together? When he tells you he's so grateful, so lucky, that he's going to spend the rest of his life making it up to you? The car payment in March was supposed to be a one-time thing, just to get him caught up. Then in May, another credit card surfaced, one he forgot about. That was $3,200. In June, he needed help with his phone bill, his insurance, a medical bill from a procedure he'd had the year before. By July, I was tracking everything in a spreadsheet, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see the numbers. I needed to understand what I was doing. $47,000 by November. That's what I gave him. And 3 days after the final payment cleared, after his student loans showed a zero balance for the first time in his adult life, he told me I breathed too loud during movies and walked out the door. The company holiday party was on December 9th. I almost didn't go. I'd been keeping a low profile at work, not talking to anyone about the breakup, just putting my head down and doing my job. But my manager specifically asked me to attend, said there were some executives flying in from corporate who wanted to meet the regional finance teams. So I went. I wore a green dress that I'd bought 2 years earlier and never had an occasion to wear. I did my makeup. I told myself I was going to have a good time, or at least a professional time, and then I was going to go home and cry in the bath like a normal person. I saw them within 15 minutes of arriving, Marcus and Jenna, holding hands near the bar. Jenna Kirkland was 26, blonde, perky, and worked in accounts payable. I didn't know her well, different department, different floor. But I knew who she was. Everyone knew who Jenna was. She was the kind of person who brought homemade cupcakes to every office birthday and always had something nice to say about everyone's outfit. She was also, apparently, dating my ex-boyfriend. My ex-boyfriend who did not work at my company, who had no reason to be at my company's holiday party, unless someone had brought him as a plus one. I stood there with my glass of wine and watched them laugh together, watched her lean into him, watched him tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, the same gesture he used to do to me. 3 weeks. It had been 3 weeks since he'd broken up with me for breathing too loud. I wish I could say I handled it gracefully, that I turned around and walked away, maintained my dignity, didn't let them see me affected. But I'm human, and I was still raw, and the wine was strong, and before I knew it, I was standing right in front of them. "Marcus." His face went pale. Jenna looked confused, then looked at him, then looked at me. "Myra," he said, "I didn't know you'd be here." "It's my company's party." "Right, yeah, Jenna invited me." "I can see that." Jenna was looking back and forth between us like she was watching a tennis match. "Wait, do you two know each other?" I turned to her. My voice was calm, matter of fact. I'd spent 2 weeks preparing for this moment without even knowing I was preparing for it. "We dated for 2.5 years, I said. "We lived together. He broke up with me 3 weeks ago, 3 days after I finished paying off $47,000 of his debt." The silence that followed was the most satisfying silence of my life. Marcus started stammering. "Myra, that's not fair, you're making it sound." "How long have you two been together?" I asked Jenna. She looked at Marcus. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "We started talking in October," she said quietly, "but we didn't officially start dating until—" "October," I repeated. "So while you were living with me, while I was paying your bills, while I was making your mother's butter chicken and planning our future. We were just friends." "I don't actually care, Marcus." I finished my wine. I really don't. You're Jenna's problem now. I just wanted her to know what she's getting into. I turned and walked away. I went home. I cried in the bath like I'd planned. But the next morning, I woke up with a different feeling in my chest. Not sadness, not anger, something colder, something more focused. I opened my laptop and found the spreadsheet. $47,000, itemized, dated, documented. I found the signed loan agreement. I found the screenshots I'd taken of our text messages whenever he thanked me or promised to pay me back. Then I called my lawyer. My lawyer was a woman named Patricia who I'd met at a networking event 2 years earlier. She primarily did family law, but she had a friend who specialized in civil litigation. Within a week, I had a consultation scheduled. The civil attorney's name was David Chen. He was in his 50s, wore suspenders, and had a mustache that made him look like someone's grandfather. He reviewed all my documents in complete silence for about 10 minutes while I sat there trying not to fidget. "This is a signed promissory note," he finally said. "Yes." "Notarized." "Yes." "And he hasn't made a single payment." "Not one." David looked at me over his reading glasses. "What do you want to happen here?" "I want my money back." "That might be difficult if he doesn't have assets." "He has a car. I paid off the loan on it. It's worth about $12,000. David made a note. "What else?" "He has a camera, professional grade, for his photography side hustle. That was about $3,000. "Anything else?" I thought about it. "He has a watch, his grandfather's Rolex. He showed it to me once, said it was worth about $8,000, but he'd never sell it." David raised an eyebrow. "That's useful. What about income? Is he still employed?" "As far as I know, same job at the marketing agency." "Then we can pursue wage garnishment if we get a judgment." He set down the documents. "Here's what I recommend. We file a civil suit for breach of contract. The promissory note is solid, notarized, signed by both parties, clearly states the repayment terms. He defaulted immediately. Any judge is going to rule in your favor." "How long will it take?" "Could be months, could be over a year if he fights it. But from what you've described, he doesn't seem like the type to hire a lawyer and drag this out. He's more likely to ignore it and hope it goes away." "And if he ignores it?" "Default judgment, then we go after his assets and his wages." I signed the retainer agreement that day. The lawsuit was filed in January 2023. Marcus was served at his new apartment, the one he'd moved into after leaving mine. I wasn't there, obviously, but David told me the process server noted that he seemed confused and upset. Good. For the next 2 months, nothing happened. Marcus didn't respond to the lawsuit, didn't hire a lawyer, didn't do anything. I assumed he was hoping I would give up or that the whole thing would somehow disappear on its own. In March, we got a default judgment, $47,000 plus court costs plus interest. Total came to just over $52,000. Now came the hard part, actually collecting it. We started with wage garnishment. In our state, creditors can garnish up to 25% of disposable earnings. Based on Marcus's salary, which I knew from when we'd lived together, that would be about $700 per month. At that rate, it would take over 6 years to collect the full amount. I didn't want to wait 6 years. David sent a demand letter laying out our options. Pay in full within 30 days, or we would pursue additional enforcement measures, seizing the car, placing a lien on any property, going after the watch and the camera. Marcus called me for the first time since the breakup. "Myra, you need to stop this." "No. This is insane. You can't do this to me." "I can, you signed a contract." "We were in a relationship. People don't sue each other over relationship stuff. People don't pay off $47,000 of someone else's debt and then get dumped 3 days later either. Yet here we are." "I'll pay you back, I just need time." "You had time. The agreement said you'd start payments within 30 days of the final debt being cleared. That was November 11th. It's March. You've paid nothing." "Because I didn't think you were serious." "I'm always serious about money, Marcus. You should have known that." "Please, please, I'm begging you. This is going to ruin me." "That's not my problem anymore." I hung up. He didn't pay. The 30 days passed. David filed the paperwork to seize the car. The day the repo company showed up at Marcus's apartment, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Jenna. "You're a psycho bitch, and karma is going to destroy you." I screenshot it and sent it to David, then blocked the number. The car was sold at auction for $9,800. After fees, that left $8,600 applied to the judgment. Still over $43,000 to go. The watch was harder. Personal property seizures are complicated, and Marcus claimed the watch had been stolen. Conveniently, right after he got notice that we were going after it. David suspected insurance fraud. You don't just lose an $8,000 Rolex, but proving it would have cost more in legal fees than the watch was worth. We let it go. The wage garnishment continued. $700 a month like clockwork. I set up a separate account just for those deposits. I didn't spend any of it. I just watched the balance grow. Here's where things get interesting. In June 2023, 6 months after the lawsuit was filed, I got a LinkedIn notification. Marcus Chen has updated his profile. New job at a new company, a bigger marketing agency downtown. His title, Senior Art Director. That's a significant promotion. Probably came with a significant raise. I sent the information to David. He filed an updated wage garnishment order. If Marcus's salary had increased, and based on the title it almost certainly had, we could garnish more. We were right. His new salary was $95,000, up from $62,000. The garnishment went from $700 to just over $1,100 per month. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is where he was working. His new employer was Vance and Morrison, the same agency that my company had been considering for a major rebranding campaign. I knew this because I was on the committee evaluating vendors. Insurance companies don't usually care much about marketing agencies, but we were planning a big consumer-facing push, and my manager wanted finance involved in vetting the proposals. I didn't say anything at first. I just sat in the meetings and reviewed the numbers and kept my mouth shut. Then in August, the committee narrowed it down to 2 finalists, Vance and Morrison and another agency called Brightpath Creative. I still didn't say anything, but I did start asking questions. Questions about project timelines and deliverables and who exactly would be assigned to our account if we went with Vance and Morrison. The answer came in their final presentation. The team they were proposing included, among others, one Marcus Chen, Senior Art Director. He would be working directly with my company, potentially in meetings with me. I waited until the presentation was over and the Vance and Morrison team had left. Then I asked to speak with my manager privately. "I need to disclose a conflict of interest," I said. "One of the people on the proposed Vance and Morrison team is my ex-boyfriend. We're currently involved in litigation. There's an active judgment against him." My manager's eyebrows went up. Litigation. He owes me money, a significant amount. He's not paying voluntarily, so it's being garnished from his wages. How much money are we talking about? $47,000, plus interest and fees. My manager sat back in her chair. She was quiet for a long moment. "I appreciate you disclosing this," she finally said. "Obviously, this creates a complicated situation. You shouldn't be involved in any decisions regarding this vendor." "I understand. I wanted to be transparent. I'll handle it from here." I went back to my desk. 2 weeks later, we announced that we were going with Brightpath Creative. I don't know if my disclosure influenced the decision. The committee had legitimate concerns about Vance and Morrison's pricing structure and timeline estimates. It might have gone to Brightpath anyway. But I do know that losing a major account like ours probably didn't look good for the team that had been proposed, including Marcus. The garnishments continued through the fall and winter. By February 2024, I had recovered about $18,000, still over $34,000 to go. Then Marcus's payment stopped. No garnishment deposit in February, none in March. I called David. "He might have changed jobs again," David said, "or been laid off. We'll have to track down his new employer to reinstate the garnishment." It took a month to find out what happened. Marcus had been let go from Vance and Morrison. Creative differences, according to his updated LinkedIn, though I suspected the lost account had something to do with it. He was unemployed for 3 months. Then he resurfaced at a small boutique agency making significantly less than before, $55,000, according to the new garnishment paperwork. The payments resumed, but smaller now, about $600 per month. At this rate, I'd be collecting for another 4 years. I told David I wanted to explore other options. He suggested a debtor's examination, a court proceeding where Marcus would have to disclose all his assets and income under oath. If he lied, that was perjury. If he had hidden assets, we could go after them. The examination was scheduled for September 2024. I didn't attend the examination in person. David handled it, but he called me afterward with the summary. Marcus had almost nothing. The job loss had wiped out his savings. He was renting a room in a shared house. The car was gone, we'd taken it. The camera had been sold months ago to pay rent. He had no investments, no property, nothing of value except the clothes on his back. And then David said something that made me sit up straight. He disclosed one asset that might be interesting, a joint savings account. Joint with who? His girlfriend, Jennifer Kirkland. Jenna, the one from my company's party, they were still together. It's a shared account with about $15,000 in it, David continued. Her money mostly from what he claimed, but his name is on it. Can we touch it? Potentially. If his name is on the account, creditors can make a claim against his portion. It's complicated, she'll argue it's all her money, but it's worth pursuing. Do it. The next few months were a legal tangle. Jenna hired her own lawyer. She claimed the money was entirely hers, that Marcus's name was only on the account for convenience, that they'd never intended it to be joint property. Her lawyer was aggressive. He filed motions, demanded hearings, accused me of harassment. He painted me as a scorned ex-girlfriend on a vendetta. I didn't care. I had the documentation. I had the judgment. I had the law on my side. In January 2025, we went to court. It was a small hearing, just a judge in chambers. David presented our case. Valid judgment, years of non-payment, defendant's name clearly on the account, no evidence that the funds were segregated or that there was any agreement about separate ownership. Jenna's lawyer presented her case. The money came from her income. She could provide pay stubs and bank statements showing the deposits were all from her salary. It was never intended to be joint property. The judge reviewed everything. Then she asked Marcus a question directly. Mr. Chen, when you opened this account, did you contribute any funds to it? Marcus hesitated. I could see him calculating, trying to figure out the right answer. A little, he finally said. Maybe a few $100s here and there. And did you ever withdraw funds from this account for your personal use? Another hesitation, longer this time. Sometimes for bills, Jenna said it was okay. So you treated this as a joint account. You contributed to it, you withdrew from it, with your girlfriend's knowledge and permission. I mean, yes, but... Then it's a joint account. The judge ruled in my favor. 50% of the account, $7,500, was subject to seizure to satisfy the judgment. Jenna started crying. Marcus wouldn't look at anyone. His lawyer gathered his papers in silence. As I was leaving the courthouse, Marcus caught up to me in the hallway. Are you happy now? His voice was shaking. You just took her money, she didn't do anything to you. She's dating a man who owes me $50,000 and refuses to pay. She knew about the debt. She knew about the judgment. She chose to put him on her bank account anyway. She was trying to help me. And I was trying to help you too. Look where that got me. This has to stop, Myra. You've made your point. You've taken my car, you've taken my wages, now you're taking her savings. When is it enough? I looked at him, really looked at him. He looked older than I remembered, tired. The charming, thoughtful man I'd fallen in love with was gone. In his place was someone hollow, someone small, someone who had gambled on my forgiveness and lost. It's enough when I get my $47,000 back, I said. Minus the breathing comment, that one's free. I walked away. The seizure brought my total recovery to about $28,000. Still nearly $25,000 short, but the garnishments were continuing. At the current rate, about $600 per month, I'd have the rest in 3.5 years. I could wait, but then something happened that accelerated the timeline. In March 2025, David called me with news. Marcus's father had died, and he had left Marcus an inheritance. Not a huge one, about $40,000, mostly from a life insurance policy, but more than enough to cover the remaining judgment. How do we know about this? I asked. Probate records are public. The will was filed, and Marcus was named as a beneficiary. Once the estate is settled and the funds are distributed, we can move to intercept them. Can we do that? Just take his inheritance? We have a valid judgment. Judgments can be enforced against most forms of income, including inheritances. There are some exemptions, but they're narrow. If the money hits an account in his name, we can garnish it. I thought about this for a long time. Marcus's father had just died. He was about to receive what was probably the largest sum of money he'd ever get from his family, and I was going to take it. Part of me, a small part, the part that remembered the man who brought me books and sketched the view from my balcony, felt a twinge of something. Not guilt exactly, just awareness. But then I remembered sitting at my kitchen table with tikka masala sauce on my sleeve, hearing him tell me I breathed too loud. I remembered finding out he'd been talking to Jenna since October, while I was still paying his bills. I remembered every promise he made and broke, every thank you that turned out to be meaningless, every "I'll pay you back" that he never intended to honor. Do it, I said. The estate took 4 months to settle. In July 2025, the funds were distributed. David was ready. We filed a levy on Marcus's bank account before he could move the money. The bank froze $24,800, the exact remaining balance of the judgment. It was over. I got the final payment notification on July 23, 2025. 3 years and 8 months after Marcus broke up with me over my breathing. $52,000 total, including interest and fees. Every penny recovered. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where he'd ended things, and stared at the notification for a long time. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel much of anything, actually, just tired and maybe a little empty. The money was back in my account where it belonged. But the 2.5 years I'd spent with Marcus, the trust I'd given him, the future I'd imagined, those were gone. You can't recover those with a judgment. I found out through mutual friends what happened next. Jenna broke up with Marcus about a month after the inheritance seizure. Apparently, the stress of the lawsuit and the lost savings had been building for a while. The inheritance was supposed to be their fresh start, a down payment on a condo, a new beginning. When I took it, something broke between them that couldn't be fixed. Marcus moved back in with his mother. He's still there, as far as I know, still working at the boutique agency, still paying off the judgments and debts that seem to follow him everywhere. I don't keep tabs on him. I don't care enough to. But sometimes information reaches me anyway, through the strange networks that connect people who used to love each other. He got engaged last year, to someone new, someone I don't know. I hope she asks about his financial history before she says yes. I hope she asks why he doesn't own a car, why his credit score is wrecked, why his wages are garnished. But probably she won't. Probably he'll cry in her arms about his debts, tell her he can't see a future for himself, ask her to help him get back on his feet. And maybe she'll say no. Maybe she'll have better boundaries than I did. Or maybe she'll be sitting at her kitchen table in 2 years, watching him pack his things, hearing him explain that she chews too loud or blinks too often or breathes wrong during movies. That's not my problem. I got my money back. I didn't get an apology, didn't get closure, didn't get any acknowledgement that what he did was wrong. I probably never will. But I learned something valuable. I learned that love doesn't excuse a contract. That kindness doesn't mean accepting betrayal. That you can be generous and still demand what you're owed. I learned that some people will take everything you offer and then blame you for offering it. They'll call you crazy, say you're on a vendetta, paint you as the villain in a story where they were the villain all along. And I learned that documentation beats emotion every single time. I still have the spreadsheet. I still have the promissory note. I kept every text message, every payment confirmation, every piece of evidence. Not because I need them anymore, just because I want to remember. I want to remember the woman who sat at that table and watched her life fall apart, and I want to remember what she did next. She didn't cry, she didn't beg, she didn't let him make her feel small. She opened her laptop and started building a case. And 3 years later, she won. Someone asked me recently if it was worth it. All the legal fees, all the time, all the energy spent chasing a man who wasn't worth chasing. I thought about it. The legal fees came to about $15,000, so my net recovery was around $37,000, less than the original $47,000 I'd given him. From a pure numbers perspective, I lost money on this. I would have been better off walking away, writing off the debt, moving on with my life. But that's not how I think about it. I think about the fact that Marcus spent 3 years having his wages garnished, losing jobs, losing relationships, having his inheritance seized. I think about the nights he probably couldn't sleep, worrying about what I would do next. I think about the way he looked at me in that courthouse hallway, small and desperate, and finally understanding that I wasn't going to let this go. That's worth more than $10,000 to me. Some people might call that revenge. Maybe it is, but I prefer to think of it as accountability. He made a choice. He took my money and my love and my trust, and he threw it away for someone who brought cupcakes to work and never asked him to grow up. He thought I would accept it. He thought I would be too heartbroken, too embarrassed, too nice to fight back. He was wrong. And now he knows. I'm dating someone new now. His name is Daniel. He's an engineer, steady and reliable and completely transparent about his finances. On our third date, unprompted, he showed me his credit score. "I just want you to know I'm not a financial disaster," he said, a little awkwardly. "I know that's a weird thing to bring up, but I heard about what happened with your ex, and I wanted you to know you don't have to worry about that with me." I stared at him. "How did you hear about that?" "Friend of a friend. The story kind of got around. You're apparently legendary in certain circles." "Legendary?" "The woman who sued her ex for $47,000 and won. People talk about you like you're a folk hero." I didn't know whether to be embarrassed or proud. I settled on something in between. "I just wanted my money back," I said. "And you got it," he smiled. "I respect that. I respect someone who knows their worth and doesn't let people take advantage of them." We've been together for 8 months now. I still haven't lent him any money. He hasn't asked. But if he did, I'd make him sign a contract. Some lessons you only need to learn once. Last week, I was cleaning out my closet and found the green dress I wore to that holiday party. The one where I saw Marcus and Jenna holding hands. I tried it on, it still fits. I looked at myself in the mirror, and I thought about the woman who wore this dress 3 years ago. The woman who had just been dumped for the crime of breathing. The woman who stood in front of her ex and his new girlfriend and told the truth, even though her hands were shaking and her heart was breaking. She was brave. She didn't know it at the time, but she was. I hung the dress back up. I might wear it again someday, or I might not. It doesn't matter. What matters is that I know who I am now. I know what I'm willing to accept and what I'm not. I know that I can be kind and generous and still have boundaries. I know that loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. And I know that if someone ever tells me I breathe too loud during movies, I'll laugh in their face and change the locks before they can finish packing. Some things you don't get to say twice.